Hi everyone, it's Heidi from Flutter by Heidi. I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up based here in the United Kingdom. And today I'm doing a little card which someone from America asked me whether I could just do a video on. It's a really sweet, just little origami fronted card, but it just adds a nice little bit of interest to the front there. And I'm going to be using some of our lovely in colours that came in this summer. And this one is using the beautiful Rococo Rose with a little bit of purple posy there, and I'm using a stamp set which I actually haven't used in quite a while. Just life has got in the way, and it's the lovely First Frost. I mean, this one is the clear mount, but obviously the new one's coming cling mount, but it's really pretty. It's got some lovely rose images and some beautiful foliage, as well as some sentiments as well. So, you know, you could easily use those for all sorts of occasions. I've actually used the birthday wishes from Varied Vases. I just think that this stamp set has some super little just accent ones which are perfect for just adding that little bit to the front there. And as you can see, I've got the scallop edge ribbon here as well. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. In terms of the card base, I've already cut that. It's a standard card base which I've done at 29 by 14.5 centimetres, and I've just scored that at 14.5 as well. So I'm just going to reinforce that crease there, and that's just making a tent fold. Obviously you could do whatever fold you like. I quite like a tent fold. The card does tend to look better on that. And so I'm then going to cut my DSP on the front there, and this is using the In Colour Design Series paper pack. So you get all 5 of the in colours in here in 2 different designs. You can see, so you've got this one with sort of swirls on the front and the script on the back, and the second one which has gingham on the back and the stitch diagonals on the front. Because it's 5 colours, you get must be 4 sheets of each pattern, so quite good. If you like the colours, that's perfect. And then all I'm going to do is cut that at 10 centimetres by 14 centimetres for my layer for the front of my card. And that's a lovely seaside spray. You see, it just pops on the front there with this little border. And then I'm going to cut a piece of the ginghamy sort of type DSP, and that's going to be 10 by 10 centimetres. So obviously these scraps you can easily use. I didn't do it on my other one, but I'll probably use a piece across the bottom on the inside of the card, add a little accent as well. So having cut your card, your DSP I should say, to 10 by 10, you're then going to make some marks. Now you could do this with a pencil if you wanted to, or you could do it with a, as I'm doing, I prefer to do it just using the scoring blade to make a little notch, and I'm scoring at 2.5 top and bottom, but just literally just making a little mark. 5 and 7.5. I'll put the inches dimensions on my blog. That's flutterbyheidi.co.uk, as you can see at the top there. And so just making a little, you can just feel the kind of indentation the indentation. You can just feel the edge of the DSP if you push reasonably firmly. So 2.5, 5 and 7.5. And then all you're going to do is line those marks up in your track, she says, hopefully. This is where I find I haven't done one quite as well as I might like to. Pop back in, put that in there. So you line up your mark in the groove of the track and just score. Now you could, being origami, obviously you could do this by folding, but by doing it this way you don't get any other creases showing as well. And being DSP again, don't score too firmly, just, you know, nice and gentle. Better to do 2 or 3 times very gently than it is to do one, as otherwise you might end up with a bit of cracking with your DSP. So, because all you're doing when you're scoring is just stretching the fibres of the paper, and obviously DSP, you know, it's thinner, so you just need to be a little bit more gentle and kind of gently encourage it to stretch rather than on card. And this is another one where I just haven't quite got my marks as good as I might have done, so I'm just adding those marks in again. Doesn't help that I keep saying this, I really could do with getting some new glasses. Obviously you could do this if you didn't want to use a trimmer, and you might find it easier to use a ruler as well. Okay, so having done that, all you're going to do is just gently fold those in and reinforce the creases, but I'm only doing that very gently with my bone folder. And so you could do this by without measuring, but I do prefer you get a slightly better finish. And then what I'm doing is, once I have folded those in line, I just fold those back and then give it a better rub to try and make sure that that stays in place. Okay, so there's your little panel for the front for our little insert. Now I'm going to cut a piece of card, and I'm going to use the Pretty Peacock here. I'm just going to cut a layer for the front, which is 7.5 by 7.5 centimetres. So that's just a very quick piece of card, 7.5 by 7.5, like so. And I'm going to cut myself a little bit of white for my stamping, and that piece is actually going to be 6.5 by 6.5. I did have a piece cut, but I've misplaced it just for a change. Okay, so now we're going to do our stamping. So what we've got is our Pretty Peacock and our first frost. Now my ink pads are quite juicy, so I'm just going to test this out by dropping it all over the place. Yeah, and I'm probably going to do just to show you, this is what I tend to do. Sometimes if there's a bit too much ink on there, I move it using my stamp, give that a quick wipe just to get, because it'll puddle around the outside edges. And obviously you can use a bone folder, which I have done before. I've got a nicely coloured bone folder. Here we go. So I'm just going to stamp that just in the middle there. I'm going to use the smaller one as well. And again, I'm going to use this edge where I've moved the ink down slightly. And that just gives a nice little sort of spray effect. I'm using my birthday wishes, which will probably not go on very straight because of the fact I'm stamping on camera, always the way. And then I'm going to use my spray image with Seaside Spray. So I'm just going to ink up the top section of that, and then you see, just line that up there. Because it's going over a darker colour, even if it overlaps slightly, you're not going to get too much interference with the image, so just adds a little bit of interest to it. Really useful stamp set for those sort of sprays, and the dies that go with it are beautiful. So I'm going to pop that to one side, and now it's a case of construction. So I'm just going to add some snail to the back of my card, and then, as I always say, I try and add my, don't do what I've just done, which is drop it. I kind of hover when I'm lining up, just to try and get it as square as possible. Probably isn't as good as it might be. I'm going to add again, small snail, and pop that on the inside of this. And I've got a little border there, and you could put a border of, if you wanted, of a card on the inside. And then I'm just adding tape to the inside square, apart from that bit there, which I'll have to deal with. And then what I try and do is kind of fold those bits in before adding it on. I just find it easier then. My balance is obviously out today. When my balance is out, I do find I find it more difficult to stick things square. Perhaps that's just me. Slightly bonkers. There we go. So there's our little panel for the front. Obviously some dimensionals for the back there. And again, with dimensionals, you know, you don't have to go mad. I find, my usual rule is one in each corner and one in the middle, because that supports the middle from being squashed, and it also supports all four corners. So again, the card open, sort of just hover with the writing. You want to align it with the writing, so even if your paper isn't quite square, you still want to align it with your writing. I mentioned about putting a strip on the inside, so I'll literally probably do that at about 2 centimetres, and then trim that down to 10.5. And that just adds a little bit of interest to the inside of our card. Helps to finish it off. And then what I shall do is again use the same ink, but I shall definitely stamp it off this time, because the Pretty Peacock's quite a strong colour, and on the inside you don't want it to detract from your sentiment. So just a little bit of a rose border, and probably a little bit around there. There we go. So now to make our little bow, and this is just a manual kind of bow really. It's not a bow at all. I mean, you can tie a bow with this. You just need to recognise that you're going to need to do some manipulation, as I've done there, to get your bow to sort of sit flat. So you can do it, but you end up, it never quite sort of sits flat. So in those instances, what I do is just take a few bits of ribbon and some red tape and a little bit of faffing. No, it's not really faffy, it's just a way of doing it. So just add some red tape to the end of your ribbon, cut a length. Okay, you can tell I'm on camera because it now isn't going to come away. So that's probably about that's about 1.5 inches. So that's about a 3.5 inch piece of ribbon. Then another little bit on the back there on the join. So I'm going to make sure it's in the middle. Round, fairly, you know, it's pretty, you want that pretty snug, and just trim it. So this one, in terms of measurements, is as big or as small as you like. Just pop a little bit of red tape on there. It always happens. Because it's lifting from, it won't matter whether I use a pokey tool or not, to be honest with you, it'll still lift up. Right, there we go. So there's our basic little bow, and all we need to do for the tails is decide approximately how long you want them. You can always trim afterwards, and then I just, other than cutting the wrong end, sort of cross those over one another. 3 bits of tape. Okay, so pop a bit of tape on the back there for piece number 1. If it was a double-sided ribbon, I would if it was double-sided ribbon, I would just fold it in half at the top. But because this is really single-sided, obviously that doesn't quite work. So I'm just going to pop that on like so. Then you can trim away your excess so you don't have that bulk at the back. Last little bit of tape on there. As I say, it makes it a little bit, you know, you've got quite a few layers on there. So you wouldn't want to do this obviously if you were sending it perhaps through the post on its own, but all you need to do is then just line that up there. So there we have a couple of origami fronted cards using First Frost and the lovely In Colours Rococo Rose and Seaside Spray with a bit of Pretty Peacock and Soft Sea Foam. I hope you enjoy making those, yeah, as I say, don't forget to decorate the inside of your card and obviously add that onto the envelope too. Bye now, come back and see me again soon and follow the links on my blog if you'd like to purchase any of the products. Bye.